Welcome to our Epiphany meditations. And, I was beginning to work on an Epiphany meditation for January 6th. And the thing is, as I got working on the study, it actually turned into two studies. The first is the wise men, and the second is the Star of Bethlehem. And so today, right now, I'm going to handle the first of the two studies, the wise men. And as I've said many, many times, I will argue till I'm blue in the face that Jesus is in fact the fulfillment of the Hebrew scriptures. So a text that I would use as we consider the wise men for Epiphany comes to us from the 60th chapter of Isaiah, Isaiah 60, the first 6 verses. Arise, shine, for your light is come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They are all gathered together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. Again, that's Isaiah chapter 60, the first 6 verses. And of course, we know that if we want to read the story of the wise men, we look at the gospel according to Matthew. The story is unique to the gospel writer Matthew. And we find the story in the second chapter of Matthew's accounting of the gospel. Actually, it's the first 12 verses. And that's a story that many of us are quite familiar with. But let me start with the first stanzas of one of my favorite carols. We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. O star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. And so begins the beautiful carol, words and music written in 1857 by John Henry Hopkins Jr. And then the first king comes forward in this carol and says, born a king of Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again. King forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign. And when we think of Jesus' kingship, I can't help but think of that 18th chapter of the Gospel according to John, where Jesus is standing before Pilate. And we read, beginning at verse 33, then Pilate entered the praetorium again, summoned Jesus and asked him, are you the king of the Judeans? Jesus answered, do you ask this of your own, or did others tell you about me? Pilate replied, I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Judeans. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. Pilate asked him, so you are a king? Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. Pilate asked him, what is truth? And so the first king comes forward with gold. And we don't know how many kings there were. All we know is that there were 3 gifts. There could have been 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 kings, who knows? But there were 3 gifts. The first of the 3 gifts is gold. Ed Peterman, one of my former colleagues, wrote a series of books, many years ago. And one of his books is entitled, When Did We See You? And this is what Ed Peterman says here. He says, the gold they brought was a gift for a king. Jesus was a king. Oh, not a king of this world, but his destiny was to be recognized as king of the universe. His kingdom was not of this world, and yet his kingship would eventually include the entirety of this world and of all worlds. I think that's well said by Pastor Ed Peterman. And then the second gift that we know about, one of the kings brings forward the gift, and he says, frankincense to offer have I, incense owns a deity nigh, prayer and praising all men raising, worship him God on high. The second gift was frankincense. Frankincense is simply incense that is offered at worship. Again, Ed Peterman. Not only was it an expensive gift, but it also carried with it the meaning of divinity. Regardless of which gods and goddesses these wise men worshiped in their homeland, the fact that they brought a gift of incense to Jesus meant that they attributed divinity to him. What kind of God was he? They probably could not have known. What sort of function Jesus would perform? What would he do? And exactly what he would accomplish? All these were open questions. But that he was divine is conveyed in the gift of frankincense that they brought him. And then the third king comes forward and he says, myrrh is mine, its bitter perfume breathes a life of gathering gloom. Sorrowing, sighing, bleeding, dying, sealed in a stone-cold tomb. Again, Jesus, being the fulfillment of the Hebrew scriptures, I would turn your attention to Isaiah chapter 53, the first 9 verses. Who has believed what we have heard, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity. And as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities, and upon him was the punishment that made us whole. And by his bruises we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have all turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By a perversion of justice, he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken from the transgression of my people. They made his grave with the wicked and his tomb with the rich. Although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. And so this third gift is myrrh. Again, Ed Peterman. Myrrh is a highly aromatic spice, most often associated with the burial of the dead. And so this simple gift carried with it the symbolism of Jesus' death and burial. If the wise men had brought only gifts of gold and frankincense, then we could easily say that Jesus is both King and God. But they also brought myrrh. And in that gift, we come face to face with the stark reality of what the eventual cost of divine kingship would be for the Christ child. Our God and King is also the one who suffered and died. His dominion over the universe is not cheap, but unspeakably costly. His authority is not asserted from above, but authenticated from the common dimensions of human existence here below. He does not arrive one day saying, "Hi, I'm your new king." He grows through 33 painful years of life to the point where his profound faithfulness to his Father in heaven, even in his last hours on the cross, demonstrates the Father's profound and steadfast love for us, all of us. Because he did not grasp at kingliness or divinity, but instead yielded himself to a humiliating suffering and death, the Father has raised him from the dead as King and Lord of all. And so the carol continues. Glorious now, behold him arise, King and God and sacrifice. Alleluia, alleluia, even to earth to heaven replies. And the refrain of this beloved carol is really a beautiful prayer. O star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.